who's benefiting? So who is benefiting from these higher costs to the enrollments?
The billionaires and corporations that are getting these massive tax cuts that were part of the big ugly bill. Is basically they slashed your healthcare funding in order to provide big fat tax breaks in sweetheart deals and so on and so forth. So
These cuts are already happening. People already feel them. We've had three rural clinics nearby closed down. That's meaning more pressure on paramedics and emergency rooms. We have 7 counties out of my 24 that already have lost their last OBGYN. And we've had two of the hospitals close their labor and delivery units. So the supposedly pro-family party has basically made it impossible to be pro-family while also being against contraception in John McGuire's case.
What we know so far is that it's supposed to go into effect in January. But as you said, we don't have all of the information yet. But we wanted to be prepared. We wanted to train our staff. And in addition to preparing our staff, we want to prepare the community as well, because we are certainly going to need our community partners.
Friday Power Lunch is recorded before a live Zoom audience. The Friday Power Lunch. Badass women getting things done.
I kept wondering when they were going to let the dogs out. I haven't seen that video. I was like, wow.
I know it's so much fun to see it. It's just like I needed that kind of optimism and kind of let the dogs out kind of feeling right now. So good to see you, Carrie Short, Fennell Norton, badass host here today.
Hello.
I can't believe we're here. We are in July, the hot July. So what's on your mind? I was thinking about a few things myself, from the Maine race and the Plattner thing to the recent ICE shooting and the outrage that's going on. So that's my.
Well, here we are again. I mean,
yes.
Here we are again with the ICE shooting people. It happens. It's what they do.
It's what they kill people.
And I don't ever want to get insensitive to that. And I think people should be in the streets again, just like last time. And I don't think we should stop.
No, I agree. I'm just like, I saw that the president of Mexico came out and is going to take diplomatic measures to the UN. And so I think calling attention worldwide, globally, it's sort of like what Iran, they say, oh, Iran is doing this to their people. Well, United States.
Hello.
Yeah. Besides, how about you for now?
And of course, targeting, I'm sorry, but of course the targeting, which is infuriating everyone. Just targeting in construction places, targeting in the Home Depot parking lots, targeting vans full of people who are brown.
Right.
Yeah. So two things. So I think in terms of how we talk about this, it is to continue to talk about it and to make it specific and to really go back to say the whole goal that so many people on the Republican side, the MAGA side, with their big signs up saying, mass deportation, even for them, the idea was that it was going to be criminals. And so what we have to keep highlighting is that it's not criminals and that the plan is actually changed to what they wanted it to be originally. So I think we have to keep on talking about that, and that keeps them in the spotlight. And then the second thing that I wanted to just talk about, and we can end up going where we're going, but I am really excited about the conversations that we're going to have about the Affordable Care Act and what's happening with the big bill and all of the implications of that bill. But when I was doing some research on this, one of the things that I found, which, I mean, you probably already know this, but it sort of cracked me up, is that, believe it or not, the Republicans and all of those MAGA voters, they just love the Affordable Care Act. What they just hate is Obamacare.
It's true. I mean, once they started seeing what it was all about and the threat to take it away, suddenly they became very, very fond of the whole idea.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, right. I think like making it all out there, talking about it is so important. I was just talking to Charles Gaba in the back room, talking about. It was really fortunate for our discussion today in the news. The news is about how prices are going to go up. When we talk about talking about this, making this really so it's digestible for people, that they understand that, and sometimes the way that even the government's going to talk about it, we got to make sure they're getting the real facts about it. right? Because they're going to sort of try to figure out how to make it sound not so bad, because a lot of that's not going to hit till after the midterms, right?
Yeah.
Right. And which some of it just putting it in plain English so people understand is one of the reasons I'm so glad to bring our friends from the city of Norfolk, the Human Services Department, with us today, because that's their job. It's not political with them. It's hands-on. What are we doing about it? And honestly, that's what people care about. And it does go to show when people are so uninformed about the bigger picture of what's happening. It just shows how siloed our news presentations are, right? That people aren't getting the full picture of what it really means to them because they pick their news and those news outlets are only giving them one side. They're not seeing all of it. Had those folks perhaps seen the other side of it and how it was going to impact them directly, maybe they would have made different choices.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, I want to make sure we have a lot of time to talk about today's show, because we like to squeeze people in the sense of making sure that we know who out there cares and what we want to make sure people are learning about so they can take action. So we're so glad everybody's here in the room. And if you're new to the Friday Power Lunch, welcome. We're on Substack. We do a live show on Sunday nights as well at 7 p.m. Our Sunday sit down. We have our Women's Summit is coming up. And we hope, I'm going to say it right now before I start the show, that when we talk about our Women's Summit, that it's important we talk about silos. The Women's Summit, this event that will happen August 21st through 23rd, up here in Tysons, Virginia, for all grassroots people and democracy lovers. This is where we're going to come together and make sure that we understand about, for people to hear our message. If you want to become a sponsor of that and join the other badass people that are supporting our event, today, Stair is going to share that in the chat. Join Stair and Holly Hazard and Bridget Kraft and others that are badasses. We would love your support. I'm just going to pitch our thing right out of the beginning. Also, to let people know, we will not have a show July 17th and the following 24th because we are going to be working on the Women's Summit, but we will not be lacking in touch with you all. We'll be making sure that we still are doing stuff on our Substack and you'll be receiving important info. But yes, you're on the Friday Power Lunch. It's July 10th, and we're so excited to get this chat started with our guests. But first, if you're new, rules of the road, use the chat. If you're nasty, we'll kick you out. After chat, after 1 o'clock is our best conversation. You get to ask questions, participate, and tell what's on your mind. If you're a patron, thank you very much for supporting the show. You help keep our Zoom lights on. And I'm so excited that you care, because it's all about who cares. Healthcare Hope in America, we choose. We have Charles Gaba here, founder of ACAsignups.net. He's a healthcare policy analyst, and he likes to get a little snarky about his work. And I love any policy nerds are great friends of the Power Lunch. So welcome, Charles. So great to see you. Tom Perriello is here, former U.S. Congressman candidate now in Virginia's 5th. We want to take that. We want to win in the 5th. So stick in this room and this work with us, because we want to flip some seats in Virginia. And, when we talk about what healthcare looks like on the ground, we have Valerie Hurt here and Camelia Key from the city of Norfolk, Department of Human Services, and a special spotlight, because we're not letting it go, data centers about, we want to make sure that people understand what's going on. We have Jenny Morand here from the Regional Field Director at Climate Action Virginia. And we are so excited also that Louisa Borowski is with us today to give us a grassroots report out. All right, folks, let's get this party started. And Fennell, it's all yours with our first guest, Charles Gaba.
So I am really excited. As Catherine said, Charles Gaba, he is the founder of ACAsignups.net. And so now we're going to really get to have some really good conversation behind the scene. Hi, Charles. It's good to see you again. How are you?
I'm okay. Thanks for having me.
Oh, we're delighted to have you. So I got to tell you, as I was going through the information here, you have been doing some really tedious work here. I don't think that anybody would say that there has not been anyone more granular about the work on ACA than you. Why don't you just take a few minutes and tell us why this interested you so much and how you got started?
Sure. Basically, the very short version is I was a website developer, freelance, and back in 2013, when the ACA was sort of dominating all the news and the political oxygen, when they rolled out, anyone old enough to remember, when they rolled out the healthcare.gov, the Affordable Care Act website, the exchanges for people to sign up for coverage. There was an infamous technical mess where the site crashed immediately. It was very embarrassing. They eventually fixed it, but the the net result of all that is I was just fascinated by, I'm a kind of a data hound anyway. I like tracking numbers and data and statistics and stuff. And I just wanted to find out, well, is anybody actually signing up for this, after all the fuss that was made over this new law? So it sort of started with that. And next thing you knew, I sort of just became like the ACA, like Obamacare Central, the ACA guru, whatever you want to call it, because there weren't a lot of other sources that were really tracking this data at the time, even though it was like one of the biggest, political stories in the country. And so a lot of like healthcare reporters and people who work in the industry, healthcare providers, public health experts, et cetera, sort of started coming to my site to, following what I was doing to keep track. And it just sort of grew from there. Over the next, couple of years, I actually I started listening and learning and reading from actual experts in the field and learning more about the public healthcare system and the private healthcare system and what a mess it is. And it just sort of grew from there. And so what started out as just like a hobby 12 years ago has now become like, this has been my career full time for the past decade or so.
So now you really are an expert. So let's get behind those numbers a little bit and where you can be really specific to help us understand it, you can do that. But since you have started and where we are now, can you just talk a little bit about here's where we began in terms of how many enrollments and what people were enjoying about it. And based on what's happening now, where are we? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, it would take hours and hours to go into the whole, crazy history of the ACA. But the bottom line is that the first year of open enrollment, which was in 2013 into 2014, around 8 million people nationally, and it did end up enrolling. It was sort of backloaded towards the following spring because there were so many technical problems early on. So it had a very slow start, but towards the end, there was a huge surge, around 8 million people enrolled. Not all of them, a lot of their coverage didn't start until halfway through the year at that point, of course. But the bottom line is it had kind of a rocky first year, but over the next few years, things grew, stabilized at around 12 million or so people over the next few years. And sort of stayed there for some time. Then in 2021, when the Biden administration and the new Congress passed the American Rescue Plan Act, part of that included I wouldn't call it ACA 2.0, but it was like ACA 1.5. It included some major improvements and upgrades and streamlining and such. And the single biggest one of those was to enhance or beef up the financial assistance that people were receiving, because that was always, when the ACA was originally passed, back in 2009, 2010, it included a lot of these elements, but a lot of them were sort of watered down. Most famous thing people know is the public option that was originally supposed to be included. That got cut out. But another major thing was the financial assistance for the private exchanges through healthcare.gov and the other state exchanges. There was hopes that would be stronger financial assistance, and that sort of got cut back in order to meet an arbitrary, 10-year Congressional Budget Office, 10-year score for how much it would cost. As a result, the financial assistance it was there, but it was never generous enough. It was always kind of stingy. That was always one of the biggest complaints that people had. Well, in 2021, new Congress and President Biden, they passed ARPA, which included a significant beefing up of those subsidies, which basically brought them up to where they should have been in the first place, like 10 years earlier. So, and for the next but the only problem was that those subsidies, they wanted to make them permanent, but due to a couple of holdouts in the Senate, well, actually, every Republican plus, 2 holdouts on the Democratic side, they were only able to get it through for 5 years. And that 5 years ended on New Year's Eve last year in 2025. And everybody knew this was coming. Everybody knew this was happening. And you may recall last fall, there was a government shutdown over primarily over this issue. There were other issues as well, but that was the main issue, was that these beefed up subsidies, because were going to expire. And the thing is, as a result of those increased subsidies, plus some other changes that were made, enrollment had doubled essentially in the ACA, and it was up to around 24 million people were covered through it. And that's around like 7-8% of the total population. Well, once those expired on New Year's Eve, starting January 1st, the next day, people's their net premiums just exploded. I mean, there were some people who went from paying $10 a month to $100 a month. People going from $50 a month to to $300 per month. There were some people who went who basically lost any eligibility for any financial assistance, and so they had to start paying full price, which means that they could go from paying a few $100s a month to several $1,000s a month. And it was just crazy. We're talking about doubling, tripling, quadrupling, and so on.
So let me ask you this question, because I know I'm hoping that you'll be able to stay with us too, because there'll be lots of other questions. What I want to know, and what other people will want to know, is now that we know this and you've gathered all of this information, and we know that bunches of people are losing their coverage, what is it that people like us can do? So all the folks who are listening to you today, what are the things, what are the pieces of information or data that you think are powerful that we take back? Because I'm not sure how much people actually know, when they're talking to people one-on-one about what the implications are for all of us of these dollars being taken away and the impact of the prices going up.
Sure, and it's also important to note that while the subsidy issue is like sort of the biggest, highest profile one, there were other changes that were made like by the Trump administration last year that also cut off a lot of other people from being eligible for any financial assistance, and basically meant that it became unaffordable for them as well. Case in point, they've clearly been going heavily after immigrants, right? And it doesn't seem to matter whether they're undocumented, documented, here legally, illegally, they have a green card, doesn't matter, they're a refugee, doesn't, there's all these different categories, and they're basically going after almost all of them. And as a result of that, there were several categories of documented immigrants, that is, people who are here fully legally, they have the proper paperwork, etc., who had been eligible for financial assistance, who no longer are. And that wasn't done legislatively. That was, well, it was done both administratively and then legislatively. Like the Trump administration, they put it into a rule change early last year, and then a few months later, as part of the the HR1, the big beautiful big ugly bill, as I call it, it was codified that these classes of immigrants were no longer eligible, and so there were several 100,000 people who just got immediately kicked off that way, that sort of thing. So what I've done is, over the last several weeks, as I think you noted, I've just completed a couple of state-by-state analysis. In particular, I wanted to know, because so much talk has been about how many people are losing coverage, and that's very important. Because as somebody had mentioned, the actual number of people who lost coverage is several times higher than the number admitted to by the administration, because what they looked at was they claim that, only 1.2 million fewer people signed up this year than last year. Well, that's true, but that's just people who they basically went to enroll, got hit with sticker shock and said, I'm out, I can't afford this, there's just no way. That is not the drop in people who actually are covered. Because what happens is some people are able to pay for 1 month, for 2 months, for 3 months, before they just can't afford it anymore. So as time has gone by, each month as passes, those numbers are dropping as people basically drop out. That's an important part of it. But the other part of it is for the rest of us, and my wife and I, we are on ACA coverage ourselves. Those who manage to cling to, to go ahead and enroll, how much more are they paying as a result? And it's not just the premiums either, because what most of us had to do is downgrade our coverage. If you were in a PPO, you drop to an HMO. If in your gold, you drop to silver drop to bronze, etc. So you're doing this to try to avoid or partially avoid that premium hit, but you're also being hit with your deductible going up, doubling, sometimes tripling. Your out-of-pocket costs are going through the roof. And this is something that the Trump administration is encouraging. They're basically pushing people towards the lowest common denominator. They're pushing people to buy catastrophic plans, which is like the lowest possible, type of coverage. And so I'm trying to analyze just how much more are people paying in both premiums and out of pocket. And again, I've done this for every state. I know that you're primarily Virginia-based, I believe. And so I actually have, if we have time for it, I can bring up a couple of graphics about that. But nationally, it basically averages out to something like $1,500 more, around half. It's split around 50-50 between higher premiums and higher out-of-pocket expenses, around $1,500 per year more per enrollee in the ACA. So that's like 19 million people who are paying on average around $1,500 more a piece in healthcare.
And who's benefiting? So who is benefiting from these higher costs to the enrollments?
Well, the funny thing is you would think it would be, oh, well, the insurance companies. Actually, I mean, I'm sure to some extent, some of them are, but really it's not there, because those prices are based on, they basically have to, as the cost of healthcare coverage, the providers, as hospitals raise prices, as pharmaceuticals raise prices, medical supply companies raise prices. Of course, they have to raise their rates because the reimbursement rates then go up, which means that they raise the premiums and so on. So I'm not saying that they're totally blameless, but essentially part of it is inflation, part of it is the tariffs, which are causing things like a lot of pharmaceuticals, a lot of drugs are manufactured overseas, and components for that. A lot of equipment. I mean, even things just like, Band-Aids or bandages, things that you wouldn't really think about. A lot of these things prices are going up, so that it gets passed along. Part of it also is the loss of those enhanced subsidies actually has a secondary effect to raise prices going forward, which is as the premiums go up, the healthiest people tend to be the ones who are going to say, I'm out. I'm young, I'm healthy, I can't afford this, so I'm going to drop my coverage and take my chances, which means that the risk pool overall gets more expensive for the remaining enrollees, which in turn causes the premiums to go up. That's basically called the death spiral if you take it to its extreme, to its logical endpoint. Premiums go up, healthy people drop out, sick people cost more, premiums go up, and it just cycles that way. So yeah. The people who benefit are basically the billionaires and corporations that are getting these massive tax cuts that were part of the big ugly bill. Is basically they slashed your healthcare funding in order to provide big fat tax breaks in sweetheart deals and so on and so forth. So yeah, that's who's benefiting.
Charles, I'm enjoying this conversation. I want to say that right there is the end, is exactly where we need to let people know. I mean, that's a commercial at the very end. And when Tom Perriello, who's running for Congress, other people running for Congress, what I would love for you to do, if you could stick around, we talk about how do we use that data to make sure people know it and then make sure we get it out. So
absolutely.
Yeah, so that's great. So for now, we want to wrap up and get
this. Exactly what I was going to say. So
yeah,
I think so I'm good. So hopefully you can stay, Charles, and that'll be great.
Sure. Well, I want to tell everybody in the audience, Charles, is that your website and your Substack, for people to go to that, you have done 50 states. So if you're an activist in any state, you can go in there and use that data. Our dream relationship with Charles, if people are interested from other groups, is to work with them and make this data actionable for the midterms, so we can let people know who the heck is taking this and what kind of America that we're going to choose. Because truly, it sounds like they're making a collapse of healthcare, and it's it's every man for themselves, every woman for themselves sort of thing. So Charles, thank you so much for being here. We'll see you. Hopefully you'll stick with us, because I think Tom will have some good questions. Thank you for now.
You're welcome.
So good. There's so much information in there. I'm just like, holy crap. So Louisa Borowski, let's bring her up, because we want to do the grassroots report. And I'm so glad that Louisa's here, because we have some breaking news on what the DOJ wants to do to us. So we're glad you're here.
So
I'm going to stay with you. I'll just let the team know up there, because we're just going to roll into Tom's interview then.
Sounds good. Well, so the first thing to remind everyone is we're already in early voting for the primaries. So let's make sure we are getting people to the polls. In many of the cases where we do have primaries for Congress, it's going to matter who the Democrat is. Either you're choosing the person who's likely going to win because it's already a Democratic stronghold, or you need to pick someone who has the fighting chance to take out a Republican in a Republican-held seat. So we need to start getting people excited, get people to the polls, make sure they know who is on their ballot. So I'm going to put a link in for information on the primary elections. Remember, the final date to vote in the primary is August 4th, but we already have early voting going on. We are really encouraging you to vote early in person, and we encourage you to encourage others to do so as well. The reason this is important is because we're going to want to do so in November too. So the sooner we get people used to going to the polls early, getting those votes counted, not using the mail because we're still questionable how reliable it's going to be in the fall. We want to make sure that we're just on top of all of that. Also, make sure you're encouraging people to update their voter registration. That is open until the 24th of July. So important to get that in front of people. Now, to your point, Catherine, about the DOJ. So the DOJ has contacted Fairfax County Democratic Committee requesting that they can monitor the Fairfax and Prince William polls for the August 4th primary. Obviously, we have a very clear sense of what that means and what that's going to feel like for our voters going to the polls. So we are all hands on deck for this. Also, there might be other locations that will get a similar notification. We need to make sure we have Democratic poll observers and poll greeters at all of these voting locations, specifically on August 4th. So please look out. If you are already in Fairfax or Prince William, contact your local Democratic committee. I'm in touch with FCDC, so they're going to be sending me the Sign Up Genius for their poll greeting. If you aren't in those areas and you can't travel to those areas, do it in your own location. Because as we know, we never know what the actual environment will feel like on the day of voting. And the more we have friendly faces who are willing to answer questions at the polls is super important. So please keep watch on this. Please sign up to volunteer. Really, really critical. I'm also going to put just some other resource links in the chat. We've got the congressional districts and the data from the last 3 years up on the website. Thanks to Dennis. The power packs are coming soon. And we also have the 3 amendments website. So we're not going to be voting on them in August, but we are voting on them in the fall. And that means it could be they will be voting on them in early voting, which will start, in September. We need to make sure people understand what these constitutional amendments mean, their explanations on the website, their materials to share. This is like the easy access. If you're just like, how do I make sure people know about this? We got you. All you have to do is print it out or email it. So that'll be in the chat too.
Great.
Moving on to ICE detention centers, I'm going to be putting a call to action for you to send a letter to your representatives, as well as a multi-group toolkit that you can use. ICE is a problem in many different ways. Please, please take action. And then finally, I'm going to put in a link to Ohio weekend canvassing trips. So if you are like, let's broaden the wins, let's get over to Ohio. There's going to be a big grassroots group going multiple weekends this fall. And they're working directly with the grassroots coalition like ours in Ohio to organize this. I think they're going to Columbus. So very exciting. And then
that's
finally,
my hometown, so I'm all in. I'll be driving the bus.
You should go. I mean, Josh Kaplowitz is making it happen. So thanks to him. And then finally, we've got some volunteer training for the Reproductive Freedom Amendment coming up next weekend. So I'm going to put that in the chat too. So as usual, lots going on.
Yes, stick with me. I love this. I'm going to say all of that is exciting. Look, friends, David Pepper, who is a friend of the Friday Power Lunch, is the lieutenant governor on the ballot with Amy Acton in Ohio, who's from my hometown of Youngstown, Ohio, by the way, and a few years younger than me, went to from the same town. And I'm very excited about that race. So I'm all in for Ohio for sure. And all the stuff that you had said about the ICE stuff is so important, and the polls. And we'll be doing voter protection at the Women's Summit. And I feel like now we should really implement our kind of medic idea at the polls to have like somebody put in a buddy system. I do think we should talk about that as a coalition. But thank you for that information. So stick with me, because we're going to go next to where I think is very exciting when we do the candidates. And Tom Perriello is here. Let's bring up Tom, and Luis is going to stay with me to do this interview. Great to see you, Mr. Perriello.
Great to see you guys. Thank you so much for all the amazing, badass work you're doing, and thanks for having me on.
Well, our relationship is so important. And I was talking about this to some friends about how we've been here 10 years. We have our big 10 and how much relationships matter. And I remember when you ran for governor, I didn't know much about you. And then, in the sense of Congress, it's kind of deja vu having you back and the ACA conversation today. So for everybody in the room, let's give Tom a big welcome. We're real excited about Congressional District 5. And Louisa, don't you think we have some opportunity there?
Oh, we absolutely do. I mean, 5 has been on our playbook for at least the last, I don't know, 3 or 4 cycles, but we are
Yes.
really, really excited. I mean, with Tom on the ballot, I think we've got a real chance.
So my first question, Tom, you think
Go
about,
on.
yeah, go on. 15 years ago, you cast that vote that you believe that was right, about the ACA. And then many people told you it would cost you your seat, right? And it did. But there is more to that than just now we know what was building back then. But now you're back and you're running for the same seat at a moment when healthcare is once again defining issues in America. When you look at this moment, Tom, what is going through your mind? You listen to Charles and tell us that story. What's going on up there?
Well, first and foremost, I mean, it's just the pain people are going through. I mean, the only thing I'd push back on from one of the introductions, and he covered this, is that these cuts are already happening. People already feel them. We've had three rural clinics nearby closed down. That's meaning more pressure on paramedics and emergency rooms. We have 7 counties out of my 24 that already have lost their last OBGYN. And we've had 2 of the hospitals close their labor and delivery units. So the supposedly pro-family party has basically made it impossible to be pro-family while also being against contraception in John McGuire's case. So we have 2 more hospitals that are at risk of imminent closure. And that's even before you just get to the cost issue that Charles talked about. People are already paying more. I'm on Obamacare for the 4th time. It's a great thing to have that default. We got certain parts of it right. I did prefer to vote for that first version that had a public option in it still before the corporate folks in the Senate took it out. But it was still supposed to be that baseline we were building from. And I do think we're seeing rural communities pay the highest price here. And I think we're seeing just a gutting of particularly pre and postnatal care access in those areas. We're seeing those premiums go through the roof. So, that's even before we get to some of the horrific ICE raids we've seen in some of these counties. So it's a very serious moment of life and death for people. And I think that is changing some of the politics in these areas, not maybe as quickly as we would like, but I do think people care about their families more than they care about their party affiliation. And this has become something that is really hitting, at that kitchen table for folks on core questions of whether they can afford to have kids, whether they can afford to retire. And I'm hearing more and more of that across the fifth.
Mm-hmm. So I'm curious because the Republicans have spent years talking they had a better plan and all that. We know not so much, and now what's happening with the ACA. So how are you messaging? Are people getting it? Is John McGuire's campaign? I mean, how are you handling it as a messenger to people about what you're going to do? And you're obviously said it sounds like it gives you a really leg up in this race.
Well, it does. And I think that there's a clear contrast. I mean, I helped get healthcare for about 35,000 people in the district. McGuire, we've already seen 35,000 or so folks lose healthcare across this area. We brought premiums down. He put premiums up. So it's pretty simple. If you like paying a lot more and getting less from healthcare, then, you should like John McGuire. And yes, while they go after the poor and vulnerable, and we need to protect folks on that end, people in the middle class are smart. They understand it's screwing everybody. They understand when we're not able to attract younger doctors and nurses into these communities. The employers get it because they're having trouble retaining and recruiting folks in some of these counties. That the math just doesn't add up. So I think people are pretty furious. And then that comes to the listening point, which is people remember that I did 100 hours of town halls and heard from all sides. John McGuire's just been too scared to even meet with voters. And this is before we even get to him on Valley Link transmission lines and other things. He's just takes the corporate money because he raises very little money to himself, and he gets elected with this dark money through MAGA Inc. And then he just brags about the fact that he has a 100% rating from these corporate lobbying groups. So people are upset he didn't listen. People are upset about the impacts, and people are, barely making it paycheck to paycheck. So that's why we're going to win the fifth, is that acute pain that McGuire has imposed on people, and because he's not listening.
Louisa, do you have a question?
Yeah, Tom, I'm wondering, so you talk about winning the fifth. Obviously, some of it is about what is the platform, but what else are you taking into account? What do you think it's really going to take to get to all of the voters that you'll need to turn out for you to be able to win, in the fall?
Well, I'm speaking to you from Goochland County, which was not in the fifth back when I represented it before. And this is an area, the size of New Jersey. It's 24 counties. And I used to describe it as being like a July 4th popsicle where it was, blue on top. And Charlottesville, it was red in the middle with Liberty University. And then factory towns at the bottom hated both parties. Now it's more like shattered glass. Every single county has a mix of rural and exurban and families that can't afford to live in Richmond with folks who've been farming versus folks upset about the data centers. What I think is exciting about that is there is a chance for a deeper political realignment here. Now, the first thing we have to do, and the most important thing, is we have to give our base a reason to show up. We have to be fighting back against this corruption. We have to be fighting against these attacks on our Constitution. We have to be fighting against ICE, destroying people's lives and their civil liberties. And there's a lot of work to be done there. One thing I was very proud to be a part of was when the Supreme Court destroyed Roe v. Wade. We helped raise hundreds of millions of dollars to get young women politicized who had not been as politicized before. We have not seen the same reaction after the voting rights decision in terms of our investment in African American turnout. And part of how I won in '08 and why I outperformed by 12 points in 2010 was because we invested a lot of time in the African American community. And I think in smaller towns like Danville and Charlottesville and Lynchburg and in rural communities, African Americans are even more vulnerable than, say, in a city where you have a mayor and a city council that may be more responsive. So the voting rights issue and having federal representation is really, really important to folks. So I think we do, that's something where I've got a long track record of fighting for criminal justice reform and voting rights and other things, and we can deliver in those places. And then we'll get into some other issues, because I do think between flock cameras and data centers and other things, we have some concern from some folks who've not been in our coalition about trying to stand up. And, you mentioned I was ahead of the curve with the ACA vote. I was also the first statewide Democrat to refuse money from Dominion in the public utilities. So now, and I helped rural communities fight against the Atlantic Coast Pipeline. So now when I'm showing up and fighting data centers and fighting the Valley Link transmission line, it doesn't look opportunistic. It says, oh, you've been for this before it was cool. So there's some things that were nice about running as a 33-year-old with no, voting record and all the idealism. There are certain things that you can only have when you're running with that kind of track record. And that allows me to show up in a lot of counties where I think no other Democrat can show up and be able to point to standing up to corporate greed, standing up to that corporate power, standing up to corruption, even in our own party. And I think that's allowing us to build potentially an expanding coalition in this part of Virginia. But it is going to be tough. We're going to win this race. It's going to be a race. I think we need to win the majority nationally. I think about 6 weeks ago, this became one of the most important races in the country. When I was briefly running in the sixth, we basically locked up that race, and we were building this kind of young multiracial coalition in the mountains, but it wasn't going to be the decisive race. After the setbacks of the Calais decision and the way that they ripped out seats across the South, now we need this seat to get to a majority. And there's no other red seat in the country that I think is as winnable as this, because of what we bring to the table and because of how vulnerable McGuire is. I mean, we got to remember, this is a guy, not just a January 6ther, but someone who was the only Republican or Democrat to vote to keep child marriage legal when he was in Richmond. This is someone who even the Bob Good Republicans in Lynchburg hate. So we have a real opportunity here, and we've been lighting it up at the grassroots level. And we're hoping folks in Northern Virginia will adopt us now that the mad race for other seats is over. And we would love to have you all come down.
That's great, Tom. And speaking of adopting, we are working on that right now to figure out who's going to be taking on some of these races outside of Northern Virginia. So this is so great. Also, I would love for you to talk to some of our state level representatives about not taking money from Dominion, because that is an ongoing problem in Virginia. And I do think that a lot of the folks running for Congress are on the right side of this. And yet we are really struggling at the state level to address this in a meaningful way. So I would also love to call on you to say, please play a role also, in
money
state
out
level
of politics. It's the money out of politics. You're right with the John McGuire, and that Virginia's just a hotbed of that dark money. Well, Tom, I am so grateful that you're running, and I think you're made for this moment. And you're right that those years of just putting all that, time and thought into this opportunity to come back and that experience, but you're authentic, and people love that about you. I've only heard super great things about you across all the activists, and I think you gave so much hope to people out in the rural areas that you're coming back. They remember you on the pipeline. They remember you in the fight. And so it's perfect timing, and you're just an awesome candidate. So I want to tell everybody in the room, Tom is coming to the Women's Summit Friday night and Saturday. He's going to be on the stage. I want to make sure that we have that whole adopt a candidate, whole power pack of CD5 and all the people around you. We're going to win it. And I say a road trip to Charlottesville to a winery, maybe to do some canvassing.
I would definitely think that even just getting Airbnb for the whole month.
Oh yeah, we'll come.
Of October.
Come on now. We got to spread the wealth.
We got Fluvanna. And I will tell you this: don't sleep on Danville. I know I'm out of time, but I will tell you the Renaissance in Danville is real, and it's another example of things paying off because I helped get $27 million for the Robertson Bridge there, and it took 15 years since that came through. They've landed their biggest employer since NAFTA, their second biggest employer since NAFTA, and now about to announce the third. And the mayor gives us a lot of credit for that. And so I think that goes back to the idea that when we show up for communities, I didn't run because I cared about the Robertson Bridge. I cared because I thought places like Danville deserved a second chance. And I listened to what they wanted their priorities to be. And that's what we fought for back in that era. And it has really paid off. One of those things is a casino, and it is doing very well. And they got a very good deal for the city on it. So don't sleep on Danville.
No, I think
seriously, we can't let Tom hog all the Nova volunteers, though. There's some other districts, maybe down in Southeast Virginia that need a little flipping.
A little flipping down there too.
A little flipping down here too. So come on east a little bit when you're done in Danville. Just keep coming east. We'll be ready for you.
Absolutely. And I do think that on things that nationalize the race, one of the things that I think if we can get people to understand, this is a moment to really support massive investment in African-American turnout. That's going to be a huge issue in the second, also the first, but particularly I think for the second and the fifth. And I think we need to take that seriously and obviously take the constitutional amendment seriously on reenfranchisement. So this is definitely a team effort. And the part I have the most power over is here in the fifth. So I'm going to be an evangelical for the fifth. But yeah, it's going to be really exciting. And I think this is a great chance for us to do this. And just a shout out to all the delegates that won last year, including Lily Franklin, who's now running my campaign. And I think by keeping that momentum up this year, we want that to tee up those running next year. And we are going to flip the Lynchburg City Council this year from this insanity going on in Lynchburg, and they appoint their school board. If you don't watch the live streams of Lynchburg City Council, it is the Real Housewives of Lynchburg City Council, MAGA on MAGA every week. And I think it's really upset the community. So much good that we want to do up and down the ballot this year and across the Commonwealth.
You're talking my love language, because at the summit, we're doing the candidates for next year. We're already setting the table with Bill Bench. We're definitely want to work with you on targeting, especially different communities. We can do that. So let's work together and make sure that we do.
Agreed.
And Carrie. So thank you, Tom.
It's like those Norway fans at the World Cup. We just all got to row together.
Just keep on going together.
And it's true. That's what these relationships matter. So thank you, Tom, so much.
Thanks for having me. Hope you guys can support us.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, gosh almighty. Everybody go. Let's all get on Tom's team. Sorry. This is why a candidate's showing up, by the way, Carrie, just thinking about
I'm telling you.
It matters when you show up. It matters when you have
Thank you, Carrie.
It totally does.
So go ahead.
It totally does. Candidates matter. CD2 matters. But right now, I'm so proud to talk to two friends from the city. We rarely talk about city politics. You just mentioned the city council. But this is, we really wanted to talk about healthcare at our user level, at the customer level, as my friends from the Division of Human Services call benefit recipients down here. They call them their customers, which just shows you part of their ethic of service to our community. But we wanted to talk with our guests today. We have Valerie Hurt, who is the Associate Director for Benefits and Coordinator for Self-Sufficiency, and Camelia Key, who is the Senior Benefits Program Supervisor with the Norfolk City Department of Human Services, which I am very proud to work with as a commissioner. When the Medicaid unraveling happened, I want to tell you that these folks had all hands on deck, getting in front of the problem, calling folks. And so we wanted to talk to them about some of the changes coming our way with HR 1. Many people know it as the big, you know what, bill. Down here, we call it HR 1. We don't want to be, we have experts and professionals here today. But changes were made at the federal level, which then, it affects the state and the city. So first, I want to introduce Ms. Hurt. Hello. I wanted to ask you if you could please explain to us sort of what you do and how many folks, not how many folks, how those roles with the state, federal, city, how they all work together to make Medicaid work.
Okay, great. So, of course, as you mentioned, the One Big Beautiful Bill, HR 1, that's the federal level. And so, two major changes that they put into effect, and that was the adding in a work requirement and also more frequent interviews. And so, on that federal level, we never had to, with Medicaid, we didn't have to interview the customer at all. But now we will have to interview them twice a year. So they're only going to be certified for a 6-month period, which certainly can create a hardship. Another part of that is the federal work requirement. That has not been a part of Medicaid before either. And so if they are non-elderly or non-disabled, they will have to work 80 hours a month in order to receive Medicaid. And so on the state level, there was different things that they had to put in place to enforce the policy. There had to be changes to the Virginia case management system in order for the workers to be able to work with these changes. And so on a local level, Norfolk Human Services, we are the ones that actually administer the program. So we are seeing the customers and we are working with them. And it is certainly our effort to make sure that everybody that is eligible for Medicaid, that they are able to maintain their Medicaid. So we are putting different things in place in order for that to happen.
Got you. So, Ms. Key, I want to direct this question to you then. Can you give us examples of some of the things that you all are already starting to do that are preparing this customers to learn more about the changes and how they're going to need to adapt?
Sure. Internally, we have initiated the Medicaid only team that will address the Medicaid expansion, the work requirement. We have a team solely dedicated to assist those customers. We're also putting up pamphlets. We're notifying the customer about the 6-month renewals, the changes. And as Ms. Hurt said, the work requirement, the age bracket that it targets is 19 to 64. And as she said, you have to be working at least 80 hours a month. There are some exemptions, such as medical exemption, or if you have a child that's under the age of 14. And like I said, and if you're working at least 80 hours a month. So we're trying to get that out. Do they have to
document? Right. How do they document those exceptions? Are you helping them document their exceptions?
Right. If it's a medical exemption, they have to provide a medical statement. If they're working, they have to provide verification that they're working at least 80 hours a month. And also, if it's kids in the household, we can verify that when they come in to apply.
Mm-hmm. So as I understand from our conversation previously, you're still waiting for the directive from the state. They haven't exactly come down with the exact ways, policies, guidance that you are going to use to handle this. And you're still waiting. But Ms. Hurt, you're not waiting to get started on all of this. As Ms. Key mentioned, you divided in teams. I think you said you did that back in January to get a Medicaid only team. How are you getting out in front of this? for people?
Okay. So, yes, we certainly wanted to have a separate Medicaid team because we want them to be able to focus on the customer by calling them. We want, once this take effect, and what we know so far is that it's supposed to go into effect in January. But as you said, we don't have all of the information yet. But we wanted to be prepared. We wanted to train our staff on what the new changes are. And we wanted to focus on, because they have to interview the customers. So we want to focus on that. And in addition to preparing our staff, we want to prepare the community as well, because we are certainly going to need our community partners to assist with this. And so we like to say, if there is anybody that want to help, of course, we do not expect our community partners to know what the policy is. But if a customer comes to them and they're asking about the application, one good point that you can assist them with is to let them know to make sure the application is signed. That's an easy piece. So if they sign that application and get it into us, we can certainly call them and get the additional information that we need.
And you mentioned also that local churches and local grassroots organizations can help by helping to educate people about the application requirements and the fact that it needs to be signed and sent in on a deadline. Well, I want to wrap up real quick and ask you about the street team, because that is something that is, I mean, I don't know if it's unique to Norfolk, but I love this idea. It's like a benefits bookmobile. And just tell us a little bit about that before we close out, and how that works and how they're helping you.
Yes, we are really excited about that. And it is unique to Norfolk. And so our street team, we have a wonderful team. They go out on our wrapped RV or the vans, and they set up in the community, different locations, and they are able to put the information out there. They take applications on our RV. They can actually get on the RV, and it is handicap accessible, and they can complete their applications, do everything right there on site. And so they are making sure that the community knows what we're doing and that we are here to assist them. We even have and the street team really put this out there. We have a QR code where the customer can just, scan the QR code and upload their verifications in directly to us. So we are doing all that we can to make it easier for our customers.
Well, you are absolute leaders in your field. I was so impressed when we did the Medicaid rollback to hear that your staff, everyone working late, no matter what their positions were in the department, they were all making phone calls, hundreds of calls a month. I was so impressed by that effort to do all of that while also working your 8:30 to 5 jobs to get all of that done. It's just incredible. It's just an incredible effort that you're going through. And it really, I think it gives a lot of people hope that, we may not be in charge of the policies that come down, but we're going to make sure that citizens are prepared for it and will not get kicked off their benefits.
Exactly. We are here to assist. Yes.
Well, I'm so glad you could join us today. Thank you. I hope you can stay for the after chat in case people have questions, but it's such an impressive effort that you've put out. And I feel really hopeful that at least the citizens of Norfolk are going to have their act together when the time comes. So thank you all for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's call up, and last but not least, I love today, we're coming up to the hour, but we always have time for the Climate Action Group. And Jenny Morand, let's welcome her in the room because we have some action to take on Saturday. Thank you for sticking with us, Jenny. And when you reached out right away, I'm like, yeah, let's get you in on the spotlight to talk about it. So go right ahead.
Thank you so much, Catherine. Hello, everyone. My name is Jenny Morand. I'm the Regional Field Director at the Richmond office at Climate Action Virginia, the grassroots arm of Virginia League of Conservation Voters. We also have an amazing team in Hampton Roads. Today, I'm here to tell you about the Rally Against Data Centers, which is happening tomorrow at Richmond's Bell Tower at 11 o'clock a.m. Hopefully, you've seen the flyer. The Rally Against Data Centers was organized by partners across justice, environmental, and affordability groups. Climate Action Virginia, Virginia LCV, partners at Sierra Club, NAACP, Freedom Virginia, along with countless hyperlocal grassroots organizations. Because we are fed up with dirty data centers and our leaders at every level are failing us. Data centers are expensive, resource depleting, bad neighbors. Last week, we released poll results which stated that 71% of Virginians believe data center construction should be stopped until lawmakers step up and hold the industry accountable for its impacts. Virginia's leadership was elected on a mandate of affordability. And here it is July. Virginia voters are struggling more than ever. We don't want more of these projects that drive up our energy costs while making billionaires richer. We don't want noisy warehouses in our backyards or near our schools or using up all of our water. So during state budget negotiations, our lawmakers had the perfect opportunity to live up to their promises, cutting energy bills, protecting our environment. But instead of putting people over data centers, they sided with big tech. At the rally tomorrow, we're going to have speakers from regions across the state: Henrico, Goochland, Hanover, Newport News, Botetourt, who are fighting for their health, their land, and for their families. Our unified message is this: until we have solutions that hold this industry accountable, data center approvals need to stop. If our state leaders won't pass the appropriate guardrails, then they must put an immediate pause on all data center permitting.
All right.
We're going to have beautiful signs.
That's great, Jenny. We need to wrap up because I'm so appreciative you're here. We're getting up on the hour. I love it. Rally against data
Tomorrow
centers.
at 11 o'clock in Richmond. Thank you
Great.
so much.
I was going to ask you to repeat that. Great.
Let me just
We're
say,
gonna have
yeah,
popsicles and
popsicles. Well, I'm going because I just want a popsicle. But seriously, I just saw Prince William's, but the supervisors voted against the data center, one of the biggest one that was coming in. Somebody shared the article. Thank you for what you do. I'm glad we're able to fit this in. Very important. I know that data center rally is going across the country. Awareness around that. Thank you, Jenny. And let's bring Fennell up and let's wrap this show up. Thank you, Jenny Morand from Climate Virginia Action and our guest today. And let's get Fennell in. Hey, Fennell. Yeah, and I need to tell you something, both. I need to leave, so I won't be able to be at the after chat very long. So my husband was over here standing here during the show telling me to hurry up.
You really do want a popsicle.
I'm just like, he wants a popsicle, I guess. I don't know. Anyways, thank you to our guests today: Charles Gaba, Tom Perriello, Valerie Hurt, and Camelia Key, and Jenny Morand. What a show, what a roundup. And thank you to our patrons in the room. And remember to get your ticket for the Women's Summit just to get to see Tom, and free popsicles. That's what I heard. I'm not sure, but it could be August 21st to 23rd. And please sponsor us. We need to, this event is so wonderful. This is the one event we do, and we love that people are supporting us. Our badasses are coming in, and truthfully, it's great not to have to go begging to some of these corporations when we just have the grassroots or our elected. We help become a gloves up, become a badass. So thank you for that. And make sure you follow us on Substack, YouTube, tune in on Sunday nights, and let's put up the rollover and we'll go to the other side.
We'll see you in the after chat. All right.